I'm pleased to rise today on behalf of the Ontario Progressive Conservative Caucus and Leader Patrick Brown to recognize the International Day of Persons with Disabilities and to reflect on our progress to date. Since being proclaimed by the General Assembly of the United Nations, the observance of the day has ushered in a new era with the passing of the Ontarians with Disabilities Act in Ontario and a commitment to make our province accessible by 2025. As we continue to promote the rights and well-being of persons with disabilities and to increase awareness about the need for equal access and mobility, we need to take stock of the fact that in Ontario there continues to be many barriers facing people with disabilities. There remains the pressing issue of providing timely access to treatment and support services to children, youth and adults with physical, developmental and communication challenges, as Ontario continues to have unacceptably long wait times to supports and services from autism to residential living. Tomorrow will mark the one-year anniversary of Premier Wynn's promise, but not delivering, on a new regulation with Ontario's Disabilities Act to tear down the many disability barriers that impede one-third of a million Ontarian students with disabilities from fully benefiting from schools, colleges and universities. On December 5, 2016, Premier Wynn pledged right here in this chamber that her government would enact the Education Accessibility Standard. She did so when my colleague and MPP for Bruce Grey Owen Sound, MPP Bill Walker, questioned her during question period. The AODA Alliance has pressed the government for over half a decade to agree to develop an Education Accessibility Standard, and 22 major disability organizations have called on her to deliver this province. Yet a year later, Mr. Speaker, she has still not fulfilled this promise. The victims of her delay are children and youth with mobility disabilities, autism, learning disabilities, mental health conditions, intellectual disabilities, blindness, deafness, and a host of other disabilities. Mr. Speaker, it's these and other delays that tell us, when it comes to this government, adults and children with disabilities are low priority. For example, we still continue to hear about delays with the Assistive Devices program that impacts some of our most vulnerable, severely disabled citizens. Imagine the incredible talents and opportunities that are going to waste as a result of this government's cut to these social programs and services. All of these gaps are a reminder that this government could be and should be doing more to address the many gaps that remain for people living with disabilities. Mr. Speaker, we believe individuals with disabilities strengthen our workforce, our communities, and our province. So we always uphold the basic relief of equal access, equal opportunity, and equal respect for all Ontarians. Our caucus has been raising these concerns in question period and challenged the government on the continued lack of accessibility standards. Without these standards, students with disabilities will continue to face barriers. For example, the Education Accessibility Standard could set provincial standards regarding situations where students with disabilities need to bring a service animal to school. Some students with disabilities, including those with autism spectrum disorder, may benefit from a service dog that assists them in self-regulating. Yet in Ontario, these students and their families have to fight to be allowed to bring their service animal to school because some school boards refuse to recognize this need. This is also why my party has pledged to expand the rights and explicitly allow people with disabilities or autism to have service animals in public places. Finally, there's the issue of mental health. While this is an issue that all of us are passionate about, we're still reminded almost every day how this critical area continues to be chronically underfunded. As a result, people with mental illness continue to go without access to the resources they need so desperately. My colleague and MPP for Nepean Carleton last week pointed out how the City of Ottawa, there have been 3 suicides within 10 months at the Ottawa Detention Centre. One man took his own life and another was kept in the detention centre only because there were no beds available at the Royal Ottawa Mental Health Centre, where he was supposed to be undergoing assessment. This is not the Ontario for those struggling with mental illness should expect to live in. Yet we don't think this government realized just how hard life is getting harder for Ontarians with disabilities. So, Mr. Speaker, this is why our party pledged last week to build a comprehensive mental health system, which will be the largest mental health commitment in Canadian provincial history, and to boost the Assisted Devices program by increasing funding supports and eligibility criteria, as well as to roll out a new Ontario child care refund of $11,000 for parents with disabled children. We want to end the huge gaps in service, and we're going to do that by providing the needed resources. We want to restore Ontarians' trust in government and confidence that they'll have access to the services they desperately need, from special education funding to autism and mental health. So naturally, I was a little perplexed having heard the ministers repeat what our government has always promised to do, to build a fair Ontario for all people. I respectfully suggest to her that you don't build a fair Ontario by continually neglecting to improve accessibility, evidenced by our government's lack of action on the Accessibility for Ontarians Disability Act. In closing, As we observe the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, let us reflect on the true progress to date and commit ourselves to doing better, which is building a better Ontario, one that truly strives every day to identify and remove any limitations and any barriers facing our friends and neighbours and any person who lives with a disability in Ontario. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Further response?